Hey everyone, and welcome back. Now today I wanted to talk about Ethereum and answer the question, is it finally over? And now obviously the next question you may be asking is, well, is what finally over, right? And in my belief, I think the lows that Ethereum has been seeing and kind of the very negative market sentiment and whatnot, I think that is probably what is finally over for Ethereum. I think we're starting to see some really bullish momentum and some signals within the Ethereum ecosystem, as well as on the price chart as well, that I do think could definitely propel us up to some new all-time highs and seeing us at some Ethereum prices that we saw earlier on in this year. So let's go on ahead and kind of walk through some of the data that we're seeing, and we'll go from there. So starting out, I wanted to look at Ethereum options open interest. And the reason why is because what we can see is we've seen a general kind of uptrend peaking out kind of in March, early April, and then we've seen basically just down from there, right? And we've recently hit kind of what were lows not seen since kind of the end of 2022. We hit some lows that we saw at the beginning of September. And since then, open interest has really started to creep back up along with price. Now, a lot of you may be thinking, well, yeah, open interest is like creeping up, but it's still super low, which is true, right? But we are starting to see some of this price creeping back up. And what we can see is this, to me, looks like a point of max capitulation, because these are levels we have not seen even close to where we are, especially at the Ethereum price route, right? Like the max low here was like what, 2200 ETH, and the last time we saw this, ETH was at $1,800, and really the last time we saw it sustainably below that, it was at $1,200. So the level of interest we're seeing, particularly for where the price is at for Ethereum, I think is pretty substantial and definitely worthwhile to note, just because now that we have started to see Ethereum price start to come back up, I expect to see the open interest balloon back to some of these levels that we saw here in March and April. And obviously, things have held, I would say, fairly well, just given kind of the price that we're sitting at as far as open interest is concerned. So that's the first thing I want to take a look at. The second thing I want to take a look at here is the Ethereum chart. Now, before we dive into the Ethereum chart, if you are finding the information in this video useful, please do give me a like and subscribe. It really does help me out a lot. I'm trying to grow my channel up to 10,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and so your help really does make a big difference, and so I'd really appreciate if I could get your help with that. But let's continue on and keep going through the Ethereum information. So what we can see here is we did see kind of some drops to these kind of lows. We did bounce off of this lower support here. As I mentioned in the past, dropping below this is really bad news, right? And what we have seen is we did come up, we kind of stabilized on this support and then moved up into this one. And as we can see, we've put some pretty strong support in at this level. We can see not only have we bounced off it multiple different times, we've come back, retested it, bounced off, come back, bounced off, all these different times. But you can see we actually do have some pretty decent wicks here to show that there is a pretty strong level of buying power and demand at this level, which I would say is really good. We can kind of see that here as well. If we look a little bit in the past, this is a pretty strong level of support. And so, given the bullish momentum that we see in the market, it's my opinion that we probably don't break this, at least in the near future. But again, there is always the possibility of a black swan that could in fact make that happen. I don't actually know for sure. This is not financial advice. I'm not able to tell the future. Anything could happen, but just based on kind of what we're seeing in the chart here, I do think that we're probably sitting at a pretty good level of support here. And I would imagine that we kind of continue up, probably retest this, and then, obviously all the way up through here. But from the pure technical perspective, things are seeming to look pretty good for Ethereum. If we look at the Bollinger Bands as well, we are sitting at the top end of the Bollinger Bands. So, I mean, this I think is why price has been kind of so constricted within this area, is because generally price doesn't move too far outside of these Bollinger Bands. Obviously it can happen, we've seen it here, and I'm sure if we looked further back we'd see it to the upside as well. But that's, I would imagine, why price is pretty constricted here. We can see that the Bollinger Bands are moving up the longer that we hold price here, so it will start to give us some more flexibility as far as movement is concerned. But right now we are kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, at least kind of basically what it looks like between Bollinger Bands. So the next thing I want to bring up here is, as you can see, I've been doing all my charting on Margex. If you are interested in trading, leverage trading, Margex is a great place to do it. You don't need a KYC, and you also don't need a VPN, so you can essentially just get signed up and start trading, which is really nice. You can trade Ethereum and Bitcoin up to 100x leverage. They also do have a ton of channel favorites here: Jasmy, ICP, some Solana obviously is another big one. There's a lot of good options here in trading pairs. Also, they do have up to a $10,000 deposit bonus. So if you are looking to get signed up, that is kind of a nice incentive. I did take a recent trade. I think it was last night. I longed Bitcoin. We can see that it's actually done pretty well so far because the market has done very nicely today. And so, obviously this is risky. It's not without its risk, and you do have to be very careful, but you can do fairly well when you're trading on leverage, just because even these tiny moves can be pretty substantial. So if you're interested, feel free to look at my link below and click on that and go get signed up. But as I will always say, leverage trading is very risky, and it's definitely not for the faint of heart. So if you're not familiar with trading, or you don't really have a ton of interest in short-term trading, I would say definitely I would pass on this one. But if you do have interest in short-term trading and trying to figure that out, Margex, I would say, is a great option for that. So anyway, moving on, the next thing I wanted to look at here is the Ethereum liquidation heat map. And we've looked at this before for Bitcoin, but I don't know that we've really spent too much time looking at it for Ethereum. But I figured since we started to see some more upward pressure on Ethereum's price, what are kind of like the big places that we're seeing as far as like massive zones of liquidations? So what we can see, obviously down below this point of support here, we see a massive chunk at this level, and then we also see another one down at this level. I think if we were to open this up to like the 6 month, or probably even further like the year, we see that there actually is another strong level of support down at this like 1700 level. To the upside, we can see at about this 2800 level, there's another strong point of resistance, and then kind of in this whole area there are a lot of liquidations, but the next really strong one seems to be up at this 3600, which again gets us past this local high. We do start to see some more up towards the 4,000 range, and this is where we start looking at more of the all-time, or not all-time highs, but I guess like the local tops that we saw within March and April. So anyway, that's kind of what we're looking at as far as like major points of resistance are concerned. We can see 2,800 is going to be a big one, and then also 35 is kind of the big ones to the upside, and then to the downside we've got that 1990, and then probably like a 1760-ish range. So that's kind of what we're looking at there. As far as Ethereum's ecosystem, how are things looking? Are things looking good, bad, whatever? Well, overall, as I've talked about several times before on the channel, things continue, in my opinion, to look really good. We can see transaction counts. Obviously, we've kind of seen a pullback from recent highs, but we are at this point, I mean, it's starting to look like we may put in a lower low, but at least at this point, it's still at like at least an equivalent high, or maybe even a very slight higher high. But historically, we can see the transaction count, the activity on layer 2s is really ballooned, which is quite nice to see. We also can see that stable coins have done really well on layer 2s also, which is good to see. Fees have come down. If we look into this, we can see that fees have started to tick back up just a tiny bit, but gas on Ethereum has been very low for the past like month or two. So fees have been, of course, equally very low. What we can see also on layer 2s is, I mean, Base is like becoming essentially the like one and only layer 2 that people care about, at least in terms of activity. If we do look at total value locked, we will see that ARBITRUM still does hold that. We'll get there in a second. But at least for right now, Base is seeing, and this is the thing that I think really looks pretty bullish to me for Ethereum just in general, is because first off, they have a very like alive and burgeoning like ecosystem, but also in addition to that, Base is seeing growth that most crypto projects could only dream of, right? And so this is something that I don't really think can be overlooked, because I mean, just look at the volume that Base is putting in and continuing to grow. If we look, there's 6.5 million weekly active users here, 6.8 here. So even though the peak kind of came down a tiny bit, that's from basically every other chain, right? Base continues to grow and grow, and this is growth that frankly is staggering. And I think people are kind of overlooking this maybe more than they should. And so this is something that I just want to keep pointing out, is because Base obviously is supported by Coinbase. Coinbase has a massive reach, and when crypto retail comes back, I would imagine that Base will be one of the major winners for that. Now, what we can see in total value locked, ARBITRUM is definitely still the leader here, but Base is catching up, and we can actually see that they passed OPTIMISM about in early June and have continued to hold that lead. The gap is definitely not widening in the same perspective that I would have expected, but I do think some of this will come as we start to see more mainstream adoption and more building and a lot of this type of stuff happening on Base. But right now, obviously, the TVL down from its all-time highs kind of in early April, which again kind of makes sense with everything else that we've seen in the crypto market, but we are starting to see that climb back up, which is really, really good. The next thing I wanted to look at is ultrasound money. This is kind of just an overall kind of chart of the state of Ethereum and its tokenomics and supply and demand and all that type of stuff. And so what we can see, as we talked about before, late March, early April, essentially Ethereum supply just kind of starts to go up only. And that's mainly because gas has been super low. Now I'm talking like super low. I mean, there were a couple of days where we were seeing like 3 gwei, 2 gwei, like I've never really seen that before, especially in the middle of what we all might consider to be a bull market. Like that's ridiculous. What we can see now is we are at kind of 37 to 39, which is definitely higher. So we can see that there is definitely a lot more activity going on in the Ethereum ecosystem right now. This will start to see some more Ethereum being burned. So not a whole huge concern here. I think this is going to probably level out some of the supply. And if we can see lately, let me see if I can zoom this in a little bit, because lately what we have been able to see, yeah, see, look at this. We actually have been deflationary over I guess that was only an hour. But over the past couple of days, we have started to kind of tail off on the growth here. And in some very obviously short periods, started to kind of go deflationary again. And so obviously as Ethereum's gas continues to rise, I expect this to kind of start to kind of level out and potentially even go negative again. And so this is something that, is definitely worth keeping an eye on. And as we get more into the bull run, I can see that maybe Ethereum supply continues to go deflationary again, which in a bull run could potentially send Ethereum's price just rocketing, which obviously would be cool. So anyway, that's kind of where we're looking at with Ethereum's tokenomics. We can see it is starting to look a little bit healthier. People have been super scared and afraid of Ethereum going inflationary again. I mean, we haven't yet since the merge, if we go back to what we've been looking at, but we're definitely getting there. I mean, if you extrapolate this, probably by the end of the year at this continued rate, we would get there, but we are starting to see it kind of tail off a little bit. So, we may go back into deflationary territory. It is hard to say, but I mean, this is just market dynamics, right? Supply and demand. So this isn't something that really concerns me all that much. So anyway, hopefully this quick overview of the Ethereum ecosystem was helpful for you. It looks to me like the bottom is probably in. I'm not sure that we'll be seeing some of these lows that we saw in August and September. If you are an Ethereum fan, hopefully the fear didn't get to you. I know in times like this, especially with kind of how Ethereum was looking, like it can be pretty scary, most definitely. But obviously, when as Warren Buffett always says, right, you need to be buying when there's blood in the streets, because that's when the maximum point of opportunity is. Now that people are starting to feel a little bit better about Ethereum, we're obviously paying 20 to 30% more for it than we were previously. So that's just something to keep in mind as we continue through the markets. Don't FOMO into things. That is a terrible idea. It has been a historically terrible idea. So just try not to get too carried away. Make sure that you're buying when people are afraid. And if you don't do that, well, then don't buy when people are not afraid, because you would be one of the statistics of the people who gets wrecked when the bull market comes back. So anyway, hopefully this is helpful information for you. Like I said, liking and subscribing really, really does help me out. If you did enjoy the information, I would really appreciate that. Also, feel free to leave me a comment in the comment section below. I do try and read and respond to all of them. So, if you have anything you want me to see, or just want to say hi or interact or anything like that, that really is super helpful for me. So anyway, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next video.